A few things about me. I've been around for a while. I've been doing software for coming up on 3 decades now. I was at Barclays for 15 years until 2008. As you can tell by my accent, I am not Danish, I'm British. The British did some weird things in the middle of the last decade, so I decided I would make an escape and come to a relatively sane country. And here I am. So in 2019, right at the start of 2019, I joined Saxo Bank. And I'm still here. Nearly 4 years, it doesn't feel like it. It's gone very quickly. As well as that, a few years ago, I was very privileged to be asked to write a chapter in the IT Revolution Press book, Sooner, Safer, Happier. I have a few copies, just a few copies. So if you come to the Eficode stand afterwards, I'll give a few of those away. A few things about Saxo Bank. This is a photo from the restaurant in the Saxo Bank HQ up in Hellerup. The dinosaur doesn't represent what Saxo is. We've been around for 30 years this year. We were a fintech before the term was coined. And the T-Rex is there to remind us to stay ahead, that we need to stay agile with a small a. And that we need to stay ahead of the predators, and that our technology journey is constantly evolving. My journey, so I started 28 years ago as a software developer. I still really count myself as a software developer. I've done a lot of work in enterprise architecture at Barclays. I was chief architect for wealth management. But then I'd been passionate about agile software development since before it was agile, since I picked up the XP, Extreme Programming Explained book in 1999. So I took the opportunity to join the group Agile Transformation team. Then we decided, if anybody's read Sooner, Safer, Happier, that agile transformation, big T, is not a good thing. We don't want to transform people. It's a very command and control and not a very agile thing to do. So that turned into agile adoption and eventually turned into ways of working, because it's not even about agile. It's about modern ways of working and helping teams adopt those things for better outcomes. Then when I joined Saxo, I was super lucky. I got a role doing both of those things. So doing some technical things, but also helping the organization slowly adopt better ways of working. So this is about architecting for outcomes. What are those outcomes that we're looking for? And what are you and we optimizing for? Well, as an architect, there's some very traditional enterprise architecture outcomes, things like standardization, consistency, optimizing for planning. Do we know this thing we're building is going to take 6 months? Optimizing even for cost reduction. These are not the business outcomes that I think we should be looking for. There are some newer ones. Cloud. Cloud as an outcome, great. When I joined Saxo the year before, we had said, we're going to be 100% in cloud by the end of 2022. Hashtag spoiler, we are not going to be 100% in cloud by the end of 2022. We got sensible. We said, actually, cloud's not the outcome we're looking for. It's not, it's a tool. It helps us. Kubernetes is not an outcome. It's an awesome tool, but it's not an outcome. Even microservices, these aren't the outcomes we're looking for either. So what we've said, what we found in the ways of working team at Barclays, what we say in the book, Sooner, Safer, Happier, the outcomes you are looking for are ones that the entire business should be looking for, that technology and business should be aligned, and that architecture should be optimizing for. Those are 5 outcomes: better, value, sooner, safer, and happier. Better is quality. It's agile, not fragile. It is quality everywhere and for everyone. It's not just a testing team who you throw something to. Deming says, building quality in late and inspecting quality in is like saying, I'll burn the toast, you scrape it. Maybe don't burn the toast in the first place. Sooner is about flow. It's not about delivering your project faster, but it's about sustainable flow. It's about continuously improving so that you can get better and better at going from concept to cash, or even better, concept to learning. Safer is about security, privacy, and minimum viable compliance. Again, it's building these things in. It's not having a team who's going to inspect, but it's making sure that these are outcomes that everybody is looking for. Happier is happier customers, but also happier colleagues, citizens, and climate. All of these things need to be balanced. You can't just deliver at speed and forget about the fact that your colleagues are burnt out. You've got to optimize for all of these things. And finally, last and definitely not least, is value. Value is what you're there for. It's how you're making your customers awesome, whether that's giving them better retail banking accounts, better investment platforms, better handbags, better raincoats. All of you know this next slide. The way that high-performing organizations collaborate to deliver technology has changed from the 2000s or the 90s or the 80s. Standard practice was delivering software slowly. We spent an age, months, planning, writing down requirements on paper, doing high-level designs on paper, and then reviewing them and throwing them over the wall to a development team who'd spend an age doing detailed design and then developing software. They'd throw it over the wall to a test team who'd have made a test plan based on the requirements and executed, and maybe they get a few months, maybe they get a few weeks to do that. Then they'd throw it over the wall to another team to release, and then finally the poor people in operations will get a piece of software that maybe worked and maybe got some incidents, but they'd own that forever, and the rest of the teams would run away to the next project. That is not how we deliver software anymore. We deliver things quickly, and we learn. The loop is about many things. It's about collaboration, it's about feedback, it's about sustainability, and we deliver software, if we're lucky, if we're high on the DORA metrics, then we deliver software in days or even hours. And we have one team. That's the ideal, at least. That's the nirvana. What I've seen from many architecture departments is they're still thinking very much in the old way. That actually there's a design phase. There are pieces of paper that they can review. And I think these contradict. So I'm going to talk about one of those outcomes in particular and talk about architecting for flow. A quote from Winston Churchill from the 40s, really interesting and very pertinent today as Denmark elects a new government. Churchill said, "We shape our buildings and thereafter they shape us." And Churchill was talking about the UK Houses of Parliament, which the main debating chamber was destroyed in a bomb in the Second World War. And there was an option to rebuild it in a slightly different way, in a circular way, more like the Danish Parliament. And Churchill said, no. The way we have our Parliament set up, two sides, two big parties, and I want to keep that because that's how I want to keep the British political system. And that's true, and that's how it was rebuilt, and that's how the British political system remains today. Gene Kim has taken that quote and evolved it. He says, "We shape our architectures, and thereafter they shape us." I'll talk a bit more about Conway's law later, but this is much broader than that. The way we have built our systems shapes our organization, constrains our organization to work in certain ways. Gene goes on to say, the systems we build become larger, coordination increases. Coordination is not something that is something we want to spend time on. Coordination doesn't create value. And systems can grow so large, and the need for coordination can grow so large that we end up spending much more time employing much more people whose roles are to coordinate rather than to deliver value. I like to show this picture to show where we are going and where we've come from in Saxo. The number of subsystems here is way, way, way smaller than we have in Saxo. Like I said, we are a 30-year-old company, a 28-year-old fintech, because we started with fax machines, and I don't really consider those tech. But we've had software for 28 years, and some of that is still hanging around to today. But this is Roger Sessions' picture of typical enterprise software, even in a service-oriented architecture. It's components talking to components talking to components, and databases talking to databases, and just everything talking to everything. It's effectively a distributed big ball of mud. And that is complex, and it requires coordination to deliver value. We talk a lot in Sooner, Safer, Happier, the book, about anti-patterns and patterns. Anti-patterns are headwinds, things that will slow you down from your long-term journey. Patterns are tailwinds, things that will help you. And an anti-pattern that we have seen is scaling agile and DevOps techniques to manage those dependencies, to work with coordination, and to say, hey, that complex architecture, it's just a thing. It's what we've got to deal with. We see that as an anti-pattern because coordination overheads reduce that agility. And you can do something. You own that architecture. You can spend some time to change it, to make it better. So let's look at how you would do hello world in such a complicated architecture. Like I said, our idea is to optimize the time from concept to cache, or concept to learning. Great. So I've got a fairly complex architecture here. I've got a user interface, a team that manages that user interface. I've got an API layer, a team that manages that API layer. I've got a greetings service that's existing. I've got a planet service that is out there and delivering stuff, and I've got a big database. I'm going to need some solution architects, a team of them as well, because any idea that comes along, well, they're probably going to have to tell me which bits of that idea go to which team and to which component. Great. As a business stakeholder, I have an idea. Great, I've got this feature called Hello World that I want to deliver sometime soon. Awesome, say the solution architects. Great. The hello bit of that goes to the greeting service. The world bit goes to the planet service. There's an API we need to build on top of that, and some quotes that the UI team are going to need to put around it. And you're going to have to persist some of that. So there's a T_HW, because that's our naming convention for tables. It's quite short.
Hi, we are Eficode, and we are behind the DevOps conference. DevOps is not a role. It's a way to increase organizations' ability to deliver applications and services faster with better quality. If Agile and DevOps are not yet part of your whole organization, reach out to us and let's discuss how to make them real for you. You can find us at eficode.com. The links are in the description. Have a great time with the DevOps conference talks.
Great. OK, so after quite some time and a lot of coordination, a lot of running around, we throw something over to a separate testing team again. And there's something that looks a bit like Hello World. It's probably got a few defects, but we can probably cope with those. And then eventually, that function will get to our customers, and hopefully it'll earn us some cash. Anybody recognize anything at all like this in their enterprise architecture today? So the pattern, the tailwind, the thing that will help is don't just think about managing dependencies, but try to break them. Break those dependencies down. Around 2002, Roger Sessions, who at that point ran the Object Watch newsletter, came up with a concept called software fortresses. This isn't a standalone concept. I'll talk a bit more about that in a minute, but it's one of my favorites. He talks about 10 rules for software fortresses. The first one is that they should provide autonomy, functional autonomy and team autonomy. The team should have an autonomous business capability, ABC he calls it. There should be explicit boundaries, partitioning of functionality. The dependencies should be defined by functionality, not by technology. Any interactions outside the software fortress should be asynchronous, should be. Not must, because, of course, there are some things that you're always going to need to do synchronously in request response, but try and aim for asynchronous by default. Data should be partitioned, no cross-fortress transactions, a single point for security. Anything inside the fortress is trusted, and anything outside is not. And most importantly, and most complex, keep it simple. An awesome book on this called Simple Architectures for Complex Enterprises. So what happens if we have that autonomous team with their own valuable business capability? Well, great. We've got an earth greeter, micro front end, a microservice, and a database. And we've changed the team as well, because we need some different skills there. We used to be able to partition and layer our skills. We used to be able to say, hey, API expertise goes in the API team, UI expertise goes in the UI team, database expertise goes with the DBAs. We've refactored both the organization and the architecture here, but we've broken those dependencies. And now the new idea can go from concept to cache a lot more quickly. So ideally, and this is an ideal in our vision, we've taken that complex enterprise architecture and we've refactored it. We've refactored not just the architecture and the technology and the software, but also the teams, and we've got something a fair bit simpler. Awesome, end of story. Not quite end of story. We might end up with something like that. Is that any better? Question out there, is that any better? There are some ways in which that is better. If those lines are asynchronous now, then one of those things can go down and others can carry on operating, but we've still got a huge degree of complexity. So another anti-pattern we have seen is microservices theater. So you have a microservice, you have a microservice, you have a microservice. Everybody gets a microservice. Awesome. Yet more complexity. This isn't just about microservices. It isn't just about, hey, great, you get to deliver a small service on Kubernetes, and everybody now knows how to do that, and then you're done. There's a whole bunch of ideas here, and fairly complex design thinking and design rules and design guidelines. Modular design on David Parnas's paper from 1972, software fortresses from Roger Sessions in about 2002, evolving into the Snowman architecture. It's called the Snowman architecture because the box on the left in the middle looks a little bit like a snowman, maybe, not sure I get it. Eric Evans' domain-driven design from 2002, 10 deploys a day from Flickr in 2009, the beginning of DevOps, microservices, which evolves from a combination of DevOps and domain-driven design, James Lewis and Sam Newman. Dan North's talk, go-to on software that fits in your head, which talks, again, as much about teams as it does about software. And then Conway's Law from back in 1967, and finally Team Topologies in 2019. I have missed out so many other important ideas, of course, but for me, these are the key ones I'm sort of talking about and have influenced what I'm talking about today. One of the most important things to remember about Team Topologies is it's not just about teams. So I see a lot of people saying, great, we've got stream-aligned teams and platform teams and complicated subsystem teams and enabling teams, and that's awesome. But Team Topologies also talks about your architecture and how you need to partition that in an effective way to give those autonomous teams and streamlined teams the ability to deliver flow. Because at the end of the day, team topology is talking about architecting for flow. This is an interesting picture. This is a snapshot of Monzo, the UK neobank. And there, at the time, 1,600 microservices. I present this relatively without comment. I'm not quite sure how awesome this is. I think this is fairly complex. So our pattern, another pattern is evolution. That target architecture of simplistic, or at least simple, autonomous business capabilities. It's not something that a 30-year-old organization is going to build tomorrow. It's probably not something we're even going to get to in 5 years. Evolution is key here. So if we're going to go from here, where are we going to end up? Tomorrow, well, actually, we're going to end up with this sort of coexistence where we're going to start to build important functionality in a new way, and we're going to start to isolate important functionality that can get customer value quicker, can get flow, or can get safety, or can get scalability, or can get happier customers, and start to build that in a new way, and start to build the teams in a new way as well. A great quote from a Harvard Business Review article. Creating and reducing complexity might sound like opposites. You add some complexity and then great, you decide you don't need it and you remove it. But it's not that simple. Once the complexity has been introduced, removing it actually can be quite hard because people start to depend on it, and removing those dependencies is hard. So architecture governance to the rescue, maybe. Another anti-pattern, architecture review boards. We used to govern architecture in this really interesting way, in a waterfall way, where we used to have phases: analysis, design, build, test, and release. And we used to have architecture boards that could review our designs at the end of these phases. Modern delivery doesn't have those phases. So what do? We've got release after release, and we don't have a design phase. We've seen organizations still try to keep up these architecture boards and insist on design artifacts that really don't fit with modern processes. Where do you put the architecture board in this modern process? Well, I think you don't. And certainly, if you've moved from project to product, there is no room for a phase. There's no room for this one-off point review of your architecture design. So we've got two patterns to introduce. The first is black box architecture governance. Treat the components themselves as black boxes, but govern how they interact. Realized architecture is not just designs on paper. This is how a modern architecture function should work. So this is how we work in Saxo. This is how my function works. A team comes to us and says, we think we need a new service. Now, adding a new service is adding complexity. So you really ought to justify that, because complexity is hard to manage. So great, I think I need a new service. Awesome. Come and have a quick conversation with us. We don't want a 20-page design review. We're not going to wait a month. Come and have a conversation with us, and we will approve a new service in our CMDB and new namespaces in Kubernetes. I think my service needs to access another service. Again, adding complexity. Adding a connection is adding some kind of complexity as well. So again, come and have a conversation with us, and we will approve. We'll approve your identity and access management for service to service, and we'll approve the firewalls that let one service talk to another. I want an exception. You've told us that we should be communicating asynchronously, but hey, we've got a reason why we want to go synchronous request response here. Again, come and have a conversation with us. We'll approve those exceptions. If it's something you need to do tactically, we'll approve it as technical debt, and we'll get you to repay it a quarter, a half, or a year in the future. Interestingly here, you look at the tooling we're using today. Today we're using fairly disparate tooling. So like I said, ServiceNow, the CMDB for a new service. We're using Azure for IAM. We're using Tufin for firewall automation. And we use a tool called RDoc for tech debt. What we're looking to move to is actually Backstage and GitOps for all of these. So enterprise architecture actually get to participate in a GitOps flow and just get to approve pull requests or otherwise. And we have a bunch of paved paths for quality, security, and flow. So if you want to do something new, then tell us. But if you want to do something that is paved already, then great. You get an Azure Kubernetes-based service. You get Docker. You get to use .NET or Python. And we'll scaffold not just the code, but the build and the release pipeline for you. And then straight away you can release. And we are a regulated company, but we do allow you straight away to release to production on demand many times per day if you pass the quality gates. The other pattern is continuous conversational architecture. So instead of that architecture design board, we talk to you. We have an architecture community of practice that we work with and have conversation about the designs you're doing and the evolution of your architecture. That works whether you're a project or a product. And effectively, we see that continuous conversational governance as, effectively, we see that as DevOps for the enterprise, as enterprise scale DevOps, where the teams are operating in a DevOps way themselves independently. But we as an architecture community are operating as a DevOps, as a feedback loop, as a learning cycle at enterprise scope and on a much longer term time frame. That's it. Thank you. I'm not sure I do have time for questions because I have taken my allotted time up.
I think we could take one.
Okay. If we have one.
We have one question, maybe from the online. Yes, Mats will bring you a microphone.
Thanks. Really enjoyed the talk. I'm kind of curious, like, as an architecture community of practice, how can you help the teams find the space to focus on improving their architecture when there's also a lot of demand on the features? How do you kind of wedge in the improvements in a way?
Really good question. Thank you so much. So we do talk about this in the book, but practically, we argue for 20% time to be dedicated to continuous improvement. We argue for 20% time. We get 10, which is better than nothing. It genuinely is. And we have that support from the top of our organization. There is an understanding that not all time can be spent just delivering feature. And down at individual teams, on individual project or product teams, they get pressure. And we actually say to them, stick your hand up. If you're getting told that maybe this quarter you have demand, but then if that happens quarter after quarter, come and talk to us and we'll escalate it. Because ultimately, if you're just delivering features, entropy will kick in, tech debt will kick in, and your ability to deliver features at pace and your ability to improve flow will go down.
Thank you, Simon.
Thank you so much.